The heat lay over the city like a damp cloak, smelling of tar and tallow and old piss, of lemons bruised in the markets and brine from the glittering mouth of the Blackwater. In the God's Wood of the Red Keep there was no weirwood with a face to watch and judge, only a shallow pool cupped in stone and ringed by 3 old elms. Eddard Stark stood with his cane beside the water and listened to the whisper of leaves he did not know. His leg throbbed in a slow, steady pulse that kept time with his heart. The pain steadied him. Yoren of the Night's Watch stepped out of the shade without sound enough to stir a hatchling sparrow. He looked as though he had been carved out of the blackest grime. A scarecrow in Oathbreaker's rags, tar in his hair, rode in his voice. "You sent word," he said. "I came." Ned's fingers tightened on the cane. "You came quickly. Boys to take. And girls, if the 7 send them," Yoren said. "It's the taking them back that's hard." He peered at Ned with eyes used to snowlight and dark halls. "It's to be done quiet." "It must," Ned said. "The sooner the better. This very night if it can be contrived. You know the little one. She fights like a wolf that's found a trap on her leg. That is a comfort. My elder, my Sansa. She's gentler. Both together?" Yoren scratched at his beard, making a strawy sound. "2 birds in 1 cage. Loud birds. Hardly seems wise. I will not trust them to remain in this nest," Ned said. "Not with serpents coiled beneath the rushes. Robert's wound festers. The Queen has filled the court with Lannister steel. If I make the move I must make, Cersei will strike for my children. She will not have them." The old crow's face did not change. It had seen worse. It had seen boys die north of a wall the size of a mountain and not wept. "The little one I can fold in with the boys," he said. "Cut her hair, foul her up, change her name. But the other, Sansa will go by water." Ned's mouth was dry. "There is a Bravosi Carrick in harbor, the Lysara. Varys assures me the captain has no love of the Lannisters and great love of his coin, which I have provided. She sails by first light on the last of the ebb, with certain crates of saffron that seem to be lighter than they were yesterday. My people will take my daughter and her septa aboard at the mud gate after dark." "Septa," Yoren grunted. "Fine thing for smuggling." "She will hold Sansa's hand," Ned said, and knew that in truth Septa Mordain would ring it until the bones cracked if the girl made to flee. He could almost hear Sansa now. The music in her voice turned sharp with hurt. "You promised me a prince. How can you break my betrothal without a word? How can you send me away like a parcel? I have done no wrong. I have embroidered faithfully. I have learned the words. Tomard and Varley will see them safe to the quay." "The little one?" Yoren asked. "I will send Arya to you now," Ned said. "And one more thing besides. There is a boy here, a smith's apprentice. He wears a bull's head helm when he plays at swords. See him north as well if you can. He is a king's get whether the king knows it or not. The road will not be gentle on him either." "They call him Gendry," Yoren said with no surprise. There were very few things in King's Landing that the Night's Watch did not hear eventually. "I'll take him. I'll take a dozen more. Gods help me." "Gods help us all," Ned said, and raised his eyes to the windless leaves where there was no face to see. Before the sun had dropped into the river, he walked back to the Tower of the Hand on a leg that burned and a heart that would not slow. His household were in a state of watchful silence. Fat Tom looked at him with the wounded frankness of a hound scolded for barking. Varley cleaned a length of chain with a strip of oiled leather as if his life depended on its shine. Septa Mordain had arranged Sansa's travel chest with cruel care. It stood open, a little palace of folded linen and lavender sachets. Sansa herself was tear-bright and beautiful as a painted saint and would not meet his eyes. "You cannot mean it," she said when they were shuttered in her chamber. "Father, you cannot. I am to marry the king." "Robert is dying, sweetling," Ned said, as gently as a man could with the long night in his mouth. "When he is gone, the court will be no place for a wolf's daughter. For any daughter. Lady would have kept me safe," she said before she could stop herself. And after she had spoken, she bit her lip so hard he saw the sting of blood. There were depths of grief in a girl that had never held steel against a throat. It humbled him, it shamed him. "Lady sleeps," he said, "but your mother waits and your brothers wait. There is honor in going home." "Home," she echoed. "I will do as you ask." She said it stiffly and then turned, burying her face in the coverlet, and he left her to Mordane's prayers and Tomard's slow kindness. Arya watched the shearing of her hair like a cat watches a wicked child. Yoren's knife rasped. The hair fell in dark tufts to the stones. "You'll be airy now," Yoren told her. "And a mean bastard you'll be, else we'll be trussed up like crows for the Queen's bakehouse." "Arya," she corrected, because she could not help herself, and then swallowed the name with the hair. "Airy," she said, and her mouth made it a snarl. "I can take needle." "Needle?" Yoren squinted. "My sword," she said. He sighed in a way that suggested the Seven had loaded his pockets with stones while he slept. "If you can keep it hid," he said. "Keep your mouth hid too. Your father says he'll catch us up at the mud gate." "He won't," Arya said. Her face worked, but no tears came. She was a Stark. She had told Nymeria to run down the river. She had thrown stones. She would not cry for going home. It was twilight in the stable yard when Ned embraced her, his hands on her shoulders like halves of a collar, not to hold her fast but to feel that she was there. "And the snows fall and the white winds blow," he said, rough with haste and old words and the fear of them. "The lone wolf dies, but the pack survives. Do you remember?" "I remember," Arya said. "I'll run fast. Run light," he told her. "Stay with Yoren. Do not quarrel with anyone. Do not get brave." Arya made a face that meant "I am always brave," and Yoren blew out his breath. "It's time, Lord Stark." Ned watched them pass under the gate, a gang of small hard boys with sacks and sticks and eyes that did not belong to boys at all. Arya moved among them like water through reeds, already learning to disappear. When she glanced back, once he lifted his cane like a standard. Then she was gone. After dark, they took Sansa. Tomard and Varley wore cloaks with hoods and did not speak to each other. Septa Mordane murmured a prayer to the mother that sounded like an apology. Sansa moved with a grace that would have been regal if not for the red-rimmed eyes and the salt bite to her lips. 5 figures only, a shadow on the stair, a whisper in the lower ward, a wedge of black against the mud gate's gloom. A coin clasped the captain's palm with a second's pressure. "My daughter," Ned said, low and firm. "If she is harmed, she will not be." The Braavosi promised, his vowels soft as paste. "We will show her the sea and bring her to a white harbor where men are honest. All men are honest for a price." Ned put Sansa's hand in the Septa's. "Remember your prayers," he said. Sansa's eyes searched his face as if there were a flaw she might mend with a stitch. "Will you come after?" she asked. "Yes," he lied. He did not think of it as a lie. It was a hope with bones on it. The boat slipped from under the black ribs of the gate. The river took it without a sound and laid it against the side of the Lysara like a lover. When dawn came, Robert Baratheon died, and the bells tolled in a city that loved the sound of bells because they could drown out any other sound if rung early and hard enough. Ned sat by the king's bed until his eyes had learned the map of Robert's wasted face. The black hair had thinned to a bristle. The beard was dry and salted with vomit. His hands were bare paws shrunk to the size of a farmer's. Ned had held those hands in battle and in feast. He had watched them grip a hammer slick with blood and a crown that had seemed too heavy for any head. "You damned stubborn fool," Robert had said when he could speak and then last, blinking like a man drunk on cheap wine. "Guard them, Ned. Guard them for me." "I will," Ned had said and had not said which them. When Pycelle shuffled in with a retinue of pages to lay out the corpse in stiff sweet herbs, Ned rose and left the chamber with the rolled parchment heavy in his sleeve. Robert's hand had trembled when he put the stag seal to the wax, and the words named Ned Protector until the heir came of age. Robert had written my son where Ned had wanted the truth, but even the dead deserved the mercies the living could afford. Renly found him in the corridor, green silk moving like light in water, Behind him were a dozen men wearing steel under their cloaks, and Loras Tyrell's pretty face had gone as hard as the visor he did not wear. "We do it now," Renly said in a voice that did not fit his clothes. "Tonight, while the keep is still in mourning, I have 100 swords that will move at a word. We take the queen and her cubs, hold them under lock, and present the realm with a fact too heavy to lift. Afterwards you may talk of wills and letters. While you talk, she will cut throats." Ned had thought to say no, as he had said no before. That no had left 2 of his household dead on the cobbles and his leg in splints. It had left Sansa under a roof with Cersei Lannister. The shape of all that hovered behind Renly's eyes. Ned closed his hand around the parchment in his sleeve until it creased. "My daughters are gone," he said, and saw the quick flick of Renly's gaze to Loras. A question asked and answered in a heartbeat. "You will have your 100 swords. But hear me, the crown is Stannis's, by law and by blood. We do not place a bastard on the throne to keep another off it. We do not place a younger brother above an elder. We do not make war for your vanity or your lover's garland. We do this for the realm." Something hot and bright sprang in Renly's face and was gone. "Law," he said, making the single syllable a jest. "You speak to me of law with a parchment in your sleeve and treason on your tongue. Very well, very well. The queen first." They moved like a knife under silk. Loras's men took posts in halls, at doors, at wells. Ned placed what household he had to guard the Tower of the Hand and the steps of the throne room. Varys flowed out of nowhere and everywhere with the news that Janos Slynt had aught to say about who commanded the city watch and who commanded the purse that fed it. Littlefinger smiled as if at an old joke. "The gold cloaks are good men," he purred, and his mockingbird pin caught a lamp and shone like a lie. "They will bulk at a river of blood in the throne room. One small purse will weigh more than all your Stark iron." "You will keep your purse?" Ned told him, and the quick look that Peter Baelish gave him was the first honest thing he had seen on that face. Varys tilted his head like a sparrow. "It is easier to sing a lullaby than a dirge, Lord Stark. With your leave, I will whisper it." Took fewer than 20 heartbeats to take the queen. Meryn Trant and Boros Blunt came lazily to the Tower of the Hand on the news that Robert had summoned the council to the throne room at once. Renly's 100 turned the key behind them. Sandor Clegane was drinking, for he had learned long ago the wisdom of putting wine between himself and the worlds of men. When Loras rounded a corner with 3 in half-plate and 4 in leather, the hound laughed and reached for his sword, then saw how many stood behind and the laugh D. Eddon said, "If you mean to take me, best bring fire," he said to Loras. "Not this night," said Loras Tyrell and stepped aside. The hound went, and the heat of him left a taste in their mouths. Cersei stood in the nursery with Tommen by her hand and Myrcella by the window, watching the dawn burn a copper line along the river. Joffrey was in the yard with a hawk on his wrist and a world like a toy in his head. When the door opened and Renly stepped through, Cersei's eyes went flat. For a heartbeat she was a lioness that had scented dogs. Then she laughed. "My lords," she said, "has my husband woken? Is this his idea of a jest?" When Loras took Tommen gently by the shoulders, when one of Renly's men lifted Myrcella as tender as a nurse, when the chain that had never known her turned at last with a small iron groan and closed around her wrists, she did not scream. She smiled until her lips bled and said very softly, "The first of you to touch my son will die." "Not tonight," Ned told her, and his voice surprised him with its steadiness. "The prince will be taken to his chamber under guard, until the realm is settled. You will be lodged in Maegor's holdfast with every comfort and every watch. Do not seek to send letters. Do not seek to buy men. Do not seek to use your beauty to wake the worst thing in them. We are past that now." "You do not know what we are past," she said, and her green eyes were 2 pretty knives. "But you will." They went to the throne room together, Ned and Renly at his side and Barristan Selmy with them in white and silence. The hall smelled of wax and old triumphs. Robert's banner still hung over the dais, the crowned stag striding black on gold. The small council was gathered like crows on a fence. Pycelle put fingers to his lips and shook a powder of grief that would not dissolve. Varys looked as if he had never moved in his life. Littlefinger studied his nails. Janos Slynt came with a clink and a swagger and 200 gold cloaks behind him. Their faces were the faces of men who had been bought this morning and would be sold this afternoon and would live either way if they could. Ned's household stood with swords naked, Loras's men as well. Above them, the red swords of the Kingsguard flashed in the torchlight, though those white cloaks were still. Mandon Moore had no eyes at all, or so it seemed. Boros Blunt yawned. Ares Oakhart pretended he did not wish a thing were otherwise. Ned mounted the steps, leg burning. "King Robert Baratheon is dead," he said. No one spoke. The words filled the hall to the moldings. "He died this morning of a boar's wound. These are his final commands." Cersei, between two of Renly's men, went as quiet as snow. Joffrey, dragged sputtering by a brace of gold cloaks, wore a hawk's gauntlet like a manacle and a child's outrage like a helm. "I am king," he shrieked, his voice gone thin. "I am the king. Mother, tell them. The king is dead," Ned repeated, and drew the parchment. His hand was steady now, as if the pain in his leg burned everything else away. "Here is his will, witnessed by Ser Barristan Selmy, Lord Renly Baratheon, Lord Varys, and Grand Maester Pycelle. It names Eddard of House Stark, Lord of Winterfell, as protector of the realm until the heir shall come of age." Pycelle made a little coughing sound that might have been shame. Barristan's jaw clenched and eased. Renly stood with arms folded and eyes like green glass, watching Janos Slynt and the small movements of his men like a woman watches a kettle when she has turned her back on it once and burned the stew. Ned's voice did not change. "The king's heir is Lord Stannis Baratheon, Robert's elder brother. He is by law the first in succession to the Iron Throne. He is not here. He is summoned. Until he arrives to claim what is his, we will hold the realm safe in his name. Remove the boy from the throne." Meryn Trant took a step, then paused because Barristan Selmy had moved without seeming to, and a knight of the Kingsguard did not step through his Lord Commander unless he were very sure he wished to die on the other side. Janos Slynt's mustaches twitched. Littlefinger looked bored. Varys watched a spider cross the sill of a high window and take the air as if it were gauze. Cersei smiled her red smile. "Tear it," she said to no one in particular, and let her wrists clink like laughter. "Tear his pretty paper into little pieces and feed it to the dogs." "Ser Barristan," Ned said, and then, because men could die this morning and he should use the names they would be buried with. "Ser Barristan Selmy, Lord Commander, do your duty." Ser Barristan stood very still, and in the stillness you could hear the rattle of Janos Slynt's breath. Finally, the old knight inclined his head. "I serve the king," he said. "Tell me his name." "Stannis," Ned said. The old knight's shoulders lowered, and some enormous thing like a winter bird lifted off them and flew up to the beams. "As you ask," he said, and turned. It took only that to loosen all the knots in the room. Janos Slynt swore beneath his breath. The gold cloaks shifted. Meryn Trant stepped back. Renly's men tightened a ring around Cersei and her children, and Joffrey howled as if at a barber who had come with shears for his pride. When Loras took him by the elbow, the boy tried to bite him and got leather instead of skin. "So the stag gores the stag," Littlefinger said into the silence that followed. "It will make such a song, Lord Stark." Ned looked down from the dais and saw the mockingbird smile like a blade. He lifted his cane a fraction and pointed. "Not a thrust, not a cut. Ser Jacelyn Bywater," he said, and Jacelyn, dour and tall, with a scar across his mouth like a bad seam, stepped out of the second rank of gold cloaks, as he had promised Ned he would if Janos hesitated. He bent his knee without poetry. "You are commander of the City Watch." Janos Slynt made a sound that was half laugh, half fish drag. "Et from water." Renly looked at Littlefinger, and Littlefinger watched the new commander with the bright interest of a gambler whose dice had come up contrary. "Take Janos to a cell," Ned said. "No blood. There's been enough." Bywater took Janos's sword as a cooper takes a stave, without looking to see if it will splinter. The gold cloaks wavered and then moved, obedient to the strongest pull. That too was a law. When it was done, when Cersei and her brood were locked behind the walls of Maegor's Holdfast, when Ser Barristan's white cloak had gone like a stroke of winter along the corridor to the king's tower to assemble the Kingsguard in a new obedience, when Pycelle had been sent to his tower and Varys dismissed with a flourish and Littlefinger allowed to withdraw with his smile intact, Ned sat in the council chamber and pressed his palms to the table. His hands smelled of parchment and old iron. He had not thought he would live through this day. He had not thought he would have to. Renly stood at the window and looked out at the city as if he had never seen it before. "You have your law," he said lightly. "Let us see whether it proves stronger than men. I will take the night to consider my course." "Your course is to call banners for your brother," Ned said. Renly turned his pretty head and smiled with everything except his eyes. "We shall see," he said. He left with his men, Loras glancing once at Ned with a heat he did not waste on pity. Ned wrote. He wrote to Dragonstone, to Lord Stannis Baratheon, by rights King of the Undulls and the Rhoynar and the First Men. He wrote, "By the leave of the late King Robert, I hold the realm for you against all usurpers and seducers. Come and claim the throne that is yours by blood and law." He wrote to Winterfell, to Maester Luwin's sure hand, "Your sisters come by sea and by road. Guard them with your lives." He wrote to Riverrun, to Hoster Tully, and to the Eyrie, where Lysa had built walls within walls to keep out even the air. He wrote to White Harbor, to old Lord Manderley, whose cooks swore by butter and whose guards by coin, asking for watchful eyes on the Lysara. He wrote to the Vale's knights, to the Stormland's lords, to men who had ridden with him over the Trident and men who had stood against him there. The ravens rose all afternoon, specks against the hammered sky. That night, Varys came with a lantern that smelled of apples and an apology that smelled of nothing at all. "It is done," he murmured through lips like a widow's shawl. The ship cleared the last of the river at dawn. The river was kind and the wind was in a loving mood. "I dare say your elder daughter and her septa have learned already that the sea makes a different sort of prayer." Ned's breath came easier for the space of a heartbeat. "And the other?" "Yoren took her," Varys said. "He cut her hair himself. He is very good at cutting hair." "She will need a friend," Ned said. "There is a boy." "Wears a bull's head now and again," Varys said. "Aye." He tilted the lantern, and the light caught the water in his eyes. "Lord Stark, allow me to say that I do not know whether you are the bravest man I have ever seen, or the most foolish. The two qualities are cousins. They marry and beget wonders. They beget wars also. We are past both," Ned said. "We are only in the thing itself." Davos Seaworth looked out from the windswept battlements of Dragonstone as a gray sea flung itself over black rocks like a penitent. His fingers moved over the smooth shapes of his finger bones that hung from his neck in a pouch. His king, no, he must think it, his king, stood like a carving at the parapet, iron and salt and old hunger. Stannis's jaw was clenched so hard you could hear it. "So," Stannis said, "Robert is dead." "Aye, your grace," said the Red Woman, and her voice was a candle's voice in a room that had not been opened for a long time. The hem of Melisandre's gown kissed the stones as if to warm them. Her eyes were coals, and when she blinked they did not cool. "And a Stark has lit a lamp atop your city." "Not my city," Stannis said. "Not yet." He took the letter again and read it as if words could become truer for the looking. "Protector of the realm. Elder brother. Law." It was a language he spoke better than any. He did not look at his wife, whose mouth had folded into a triumph too pious to be pretty. He did not look at little Shireen, who watched all things with a courtesy that was half sorrow and half hope. "He's an honest fool," Stannis said at last. "Or an honest man. The one is rarer than the other." "Truth wears Lawlor's face," Melisandre said. "Truth wears no face," Stannis snapped, and that was as close to laughter as Davos had ever heard from him. "We sail on the tide. The royal fleet is not what it was, but it can carry me and 1,000 spears, and that will serve, if the city will have me. If the city will not have me, we take it. I will not leave my throne to Renly's green dreams or the lion's claws." Davos breathed out, careful and slow. "We slip past Driftmark, hug the shore and keep the channel. he said, as if to himself. Let the wind do the fighting. We'll have a night as black as the Lord of Light permits. Melisandre smiled at that, as if he had told a clever joke. Davos did not see the joke. He saw only the sea and the little men upon it. The Lysara smelled of tar and lemons and rope, and Sansa sat on the captain's stool in his airy, slanted cabin while the ship moved with a will entirely its own. The captain, a clean-shaven man with a scar like a thread on his cheek, spoke to her in the common tongue as if to a lady, and to his crew in a sea cant that might have been music, while Septa Mordane kept one hand on Sansa's knee and the other wrapped around a rosary of knucklebones polished by other prayers. When the waves climbed up the sides and fell away laughing, Sansa thought she would be emptied of everything she had ever eaten or said. After the SC condominium morning, she discovered that she could kneel and breathe and the world would not topple. On the third morning, a boy with eyes like puddles brought her a cup of water in which a slice of lemon floated like a small sun, and she drank it and did not hate the taste. At night, she dreamed of her father's face looking up at her from the black water of the pool in the Godswood she had never loved. Remember your prayers, he said. Remember your pack. In the day, she stood at the rail with Septa Mordane and watched the river widen into sea, until the water went gray and dull and the wind tasted of salt. There were no towers left to cast shadows. There were only the white wings of gulls and the torn banners of cloud and the sense that the world went on forever if a ship had a stubborn captain and a girl had a father who would not bend. Arya learned to piss like a boy in a hedgerow without caring, and that was the first lesson. The second was not to let Hot Pie see how she held her blade, which meant not to hold it at all. The third was that the road was not a road but 1,000 small choices that had nothing to do with honor and everything to do with seeing before you were seen. Euron was good at that. Even when he stopped, he seemed to be still moving, and when he moved, he seemed to be still. Keep to the ditches, he told Arya, which was to say Arya. Keep the light at your back and the sun in their eyes. Keep your mouth shut unless your guts are falling out, and then say no more than you must to have them stuffed back in. There were other boys. Hot Pie, who spoke as if he had flour in his mouth. Lamy, who had the sour look of a boy who was never quick enough. Gendry, who had shoulders you could stack stone on, and who knew how to swing a hammer even when he was not allowed to swing it. Others whose names Arya did not catch and did not want, for names were a weight. Once, at a bend in the road where the crowns of the willows hid the sky, riders clattered past in lion red and lion gold, and Arya went to earth like a hare in gorse. She wanted to leap up and cut one from his saddle and see whether he fell like a man or like a sack of meat, but she did not. She lay very still and watched ants move in the dirt beside her nose. They had a whole world to themselves. She did not belong in it, and so they did not fear her. At an inn where the ale was weak and the bread hard, a boy in a bull's head helmet came in with sweat on his temple, and Arya turned her face away so quickly she almost snapped her neck. Gendry saw her in the turn and looked past her at the wall. Arya, he said that night by the ditch, quietly, his voice like a hammer in soft wood. If you're going where I'm going, you don't have to be anybody you're not. I'm nobody, she said. Nobody at all. Good, Gendry said. He lay back and watched the stars as if they were nails somebody'd thrown in the sky and he meant to pull them out and make something better. So am I. In King's Landing, the days fell apart and were put back together with a string of laws. Ned slept a few hours out of each day in a chair by the window and woke with his leg a tree of pain and the city a roar in his ears. He sat in judgment in the throne room beneath the stretched stag and told men that the realm belonged to Stannis Baratheon by right, and if they would not honor right then they must honor necessity. The gold cloaks took down the red lion banners that had sprouted like weeds and replaced them with the crowned stag. Cersei sat in Maegor's holdfast weaving spite from air. Joffrey raged and threw plates and amusement. Myrcella wept. Tommen hid. Ned sent for skilled women to teach the little princess to embroider not tears but honest stitches. He placed a gentle knight outside Tommen's door and told him to bring the boy books and dogs. It was not justice. It was mercy, and mercy was a kind of justice. It would serve. Renly did not come to the council the next day, nor the next. With her children who are not yours or meaning, we will try them for treason as the law is written. But we will not touch the little ones. Not while I draw breath. A muscle in Stannis's cheek worked. If I am king, he said, no law will be written except in my hand. Ned did not bow again. If you are king, you will rule, he said. Rule means discerning where the law ends and mercy begins. Melisandre stepped down the gangplank with the grace of a flame and set her red gaze on Ned as if he were a hearth waiting for a spark. Mercy for serpents breeds vipers, she said pleasantly. Davos came last, quiet as a skiff in an eddy. He took in the man with winter in his beard and the pain in his leg and thought, here is a rock to set a net on in a choppy sea. We'll need bread, he said, because he could not say what else he thought. And oil, and patience. They crowned Stannis that afternoon in the throne room because he would not go to the September. He looked at the Iron Throne as a plain man looks at a chair. It would be used, and if it cut him, he would remember the cut. His crown was a circlet iron worked into points like antlers. He set it on his own head. I am Stannis of House Baratheon, he said, son of Steffan, brother of Robert, rightful king of the Undulls and the Rhoynar and the First Men, lord of the Seven Kingdoms and protector of the realm. The words fell in the vast hall and rang like hammered metal. The lords of the court knelt who would, and those who would not found their knees stiff suddenly. Ser Barristan knelt. Ned bent his back. Varys drifted down like silk. Littlefinger knelt with the grace of a man who could rise again 12 different ways. Pycelle groaned and went to one knee like a broken hinge. After, in the council chamber, Stannis took the high seat and Ned the seat at his right. The Red Woman stood by a pillar and watched them as if they were a trick of light. Davos took a place by the wall and kept his fingers in his pouch. We will have message from the south soon enough, Stannis said. Renly will put flowers in his hair and declare himself king with a child's defiance. Tyrell will feed him. The Redwynes will close the Mander with their ships. Tywin Lannister will fly red over the Tumblestone and make a sword out of pride. The Riverlands burn already. Where is Robb Stark? Winterfell, Ned said. He will hold, unless his rivers run with cousin's blood. If the West strikes again into Tully lands, he will be forced to move. Then pray the West strikes, Stannis said. Let the boy march. Wolves run better with blood in their mouths. Wolves prefer the quiet snow, Ned said, but they will run if they must. He studied the map. I will send ravens. We hold the capital. Without the lion or the flower, the North and the Vale can knit your kingdom together. The Vale will not move, Stannis said shortly. Lisa Arryn has always loved her fear. He glanced at the Red Woman. And if the faith squeals, we cut its tongue. There will be no more fat septons telling me what kings may and may not do. Kings may not burn the small folks' gods in their pyres, Ned said. They may not turn a city against them. The seven are not my gods, but they are this city's. Melisandre smiled. All men are Lawlores, whether they know his name or not. If your god is just, he will not mind waiting, Ned said. Stannis looked between them with a weariness old as stone. We will not burn Seps, he said at last, while the city holds. Melisandre's smile did not fade. It thinned. That evening the first letters came. From the Reach, an elegant hand with green ink and a scent of roses. Lord Renly Baratheon had declared himself king and was received at Highgarden with every honor. Mace Tyrell would place all the power of the South behind him. For Stannis was a man without grace and thus without claim, and besides, the gods loved the beautiful. From the West, a tight red script. Lord Tywin Lannister would bring justice for the Queen and the Prince unjustly held. He cast off the protection of the Iron Throne until such time as the usurpers were put aside. From Riverrun, a trembling scrawl that was Hoster's but had a daughter's counsel behind it. The Tully lands bled. Jaime Lannister was in the field. Edmure had closed his gates against further insult. If the hand was still the hand, he might send good men. From Winterfell, a firm, clean script that was Luwin's. Sansa had come into White Harbor with her septa and 2 men and a secret in her eyes and had gone north by river with caution. The little Arya was not with her. In the yard the ravens were fed at dawn. Bran had climbed no tower since his fall. Rickon bit anyone who tried to touch his wolf. Ned read each and felt his ribs with his breath. He was only a man with a cane in a city that did not love him. But a man could be a fulcrum if the plank were placed right. He sent Ser Barristan with a force to aid the Tullus, not great, for he would not strip the city of his surest hand, but enough to hearten. He sent Jacelyn Bywater to sweep through the ranks of the watch and turn Rot into the gutter. He sent Varys to listen at the chinks of the hive. He sent Littlefinger to count casks and tally grain and make promises he would be punished for breaking. And at the day's end, he limped back to his chamber and let the pain in his legs speak for all the voices he had quieted. On the King's Road, a fox cried, and Arya woke with her hand around Needle's grip and Yoren's breath a ragged saw at her ear. "Riders," Yoren said. "Off the road. Quick." They slid into the ditch, a slick dark cradle, and pressed down while the thunder of hooves went past like weather. When it was done, Yoren put his hand on her head the way a man pats a dog when it has not killed the chickens. "You don't go thinking we're safe because we didn't die," he said. "We ain't safe until we're talking about how unsafe we were yesterday." They reached the inn at the crossroads at dusk 2 days later. The S.I. Gien creaked in a wind that smelled of wood smoke and ham. Inside, the room was crowded with men who had taken off their robes and leaned them against stools. Arya kept to the wall and kept her eyes low and still saw more than she wished. Strangers whispering like knives, a singer plucking at a poor harp, a woman with a baby that would not stop looking at Arya as if it knew her secret. Gendry sat with his back against the post and his cup in his hand. "You watch your back," he told her out of the side of his mouth, "and your front, and your sides." He blinked, slow, as if the world took time to sink into him. "We'll be fine," he added, so softly she wasn't sure if he'd said it for her or for the cup or for the nail in the post. On the third day after Stannis took his seat, Tyrion Lannister rode into his father's war camp to the sound of hammers and the smell of blood. Tywin Lannister looked like a man who had placed every piece on a board and now did not care whether the board caught fire. He read the letter from King's Landing with a face that did not move, then placed it beside his plate and took another slice of venison as if to say, "This letter is of less use than the meat I will shit tomorrow." "So," he said, "the stag has put his elder brother on the throne and taken my grandchildren into his keeping." "Your grandchildren," Tyrion echoed lightly, because what else could he do? "Your Grace's grandchildren." Tywin's eyes were as pale as Stannis's but colder. "King," he said. "King. What is a king? A man on a chair. Chairs burn. Mendi." He folded his napkin. "Jaime? In the field," Tyrion said. "Winning the field and losing the war, if this letter can be believed." "We will see to Jaime," Tywin said. "We will see to the river lords. We will see to this wolf who thinks a parchment makes him a hunter and not a dog." He flicked his gaze over his son like a lash. "You will go to the capital." Tyrion smiled. He could not help it. The thing moved on his face of its own accord. "To whom?" "Stannis and Stark," Tywin said. "You will talk. You will do what your mouth can do better than any sword. You will go with 500 men and 2 mummers who can show you where the walls sweat. You will be my hand in all but name." "And when they put me in a cell beside the king's mother?" Tyrion asked pleasantly. "Talk them out of it," Tywin said. "And if you cannot, talk the rats into bringing you softer straw." Sansa Stark walked into the great hall at Winterfell on a morning when the snow had fallen in a hush and the sky had forgotten the color blue. The high windows let in a gray that made everyone look as if they had already died and were perfectly content with it. Bran sat in a carven chair with interlaced wolves and his eyes 10 years old and 10 centuries older, and Rickon stood with his hand in Shaggy Dog's scruff and his lip caught in his teeth. Maester Luwin came forward with his chain a cool river around his neck. "My lady," he said and bowed, because he would teach the household to remember the old forms even if the world had torn them apart. The words were a blanket. "You are welcome home." She was thinner than when she had left. The Septa's cheeks were hollow as a bell, and Fat Tom had become Tom. When the dire wolves padded into the hall, Sansa's breath caught because Lady was not there, would never be there, and something inside her would always be a small open mouth that could not cry. "Where is Mother?" she asked. and her voice did not break. "In the south," Luwin said, "where the fish are fighting lions and the river smells of iron. She will come when she may. She sent word from the Eyrie. She wishes to know that you arrived whole. She asks you to be kind to your brothers." "I will," Sansa said. She knelt by Bran and put her hands on the arms of his chair and pressed her forehead to his. "I will." That night, she went to the Godswood and stood beneath the heart tree, and for the first time since Lady died, she did not feel as if she were pretending to pray. The red leaves moved without wind. She thought of her father sitting in a Godswood that had no heart tree and making a heart for himself out of duty. The thought steadied her. In the capital, Stannis set his hand on the city like a smith sets a hand on a hot blade and turns it by degrees until it takes an edge. He removed Pycelle and sent him to Old Town to drool there with the other old men. He named a hard-eyed Tyroshi master of coin whose sums made even Littlefinger's eyes flicker. He placed Davos's dull, honest hand over the city's granaries. He had the watch drill until the clink of shields became the city's second bell. He did not burn a sept, and the Red Woman's smile became something tight and private. Acolytes of the Great September came to the Red Keep in white and humility and asked for the queen. Stannis told them she would be tried, and when they said the mother would weep, he said, "The mother has eyes for every child. The father has a sword for those who harm them." "Do you mean to kill her?" Ned asked when they were alone. Stannis looked into his cup. Wine had never been a friend. "I mean to do justice," he said. "She will not go meekly," Ned said. "She will have letters hidden in bread, and men hidden under piety. She will put her hair to use. It is a weapon." "I have seen prettier swords," Stannis said. "They cut. I still have scars." He glanced at the window, where you could see a slice of the river's gray. "I do not ask your leave to do this, but I ask your counsel. Keep Barristan at your right hand when you pass sentence," Ned said. "Let the city see white beside iron. Let the Septons preach mercy on the steps for days before the trial. Then do not be merciful, but be seen to have thought of it." Stannis nodded one sharp movement. "Good," he said. "You are good at this." "I am good at not sleeping," Ned said. The trial came a fortnight after the crown had taken its place. Cersei Lannister was led into the hall in a gown of green so bright it seemed a mockery of moss and summer. She held her head as if it had never learned to bow. She told the hall that the man on the throne had no right to the name he took because he had eaten no piece of Robert's heart. She told the hall that to use law against a mother's love was the greatest treason. She told the hall that anyone who dared say Joffrey was baseborn should have his tongue pulled out and nailed on the door of the Red Keep's kitchen for the cooks to use as a cat of nine tails. She did not cry. She did not once look at Tommen, who trembled, or at Myrcella, who kept her hands folded and did not tremble. The evidence was laid out like a corpse. The book Jon Arryn had read until his fingers were ink. The hair in the children's heads that was gold, always gold. The dark stock of the Baratheons as constant as winter. The king's letter, the Kingsguard's oath, the whisperer's whispers. When it was done, Stannis rose. He did not look at the Red Woman, and he did not look at the Septons. He looked at the city's eyes gathered in the hall like coins. "Cersei of House Lannister," he said, "you have put a bastard on a throne. You have murdered the king by neglect and the realm with pride. You would have it said that love excused you, but love is no excuse when it commits treason against law. For these crimes I condemn you. You shall be kept until I decide whether your life will be taken or spared. Your children are not at fault. They will be treated as befits their birth, not your lies." Cersei's smile was a rictus now, bloodless and far too large. "The gods will have you," she said. "The gods will have us all," Stannis said. "One day, after." In the corridor, Melisandre said, "Mercy for the mother is weakness. Mercy for the children is strength," Ned said. "And strength begets obedience. Obedience born of fear is better," Melisandre purred. "Obedience born of fear breaks," Stannis said curtly. "I need men who will not break when the Flower Lords march." "They will march," Davos said quietly. "They are marching now." They came like summer's idea of itself. Banners like gardens carried upright, horns like bees, shields shining as if the sun had been hammered into them. Renly Baratheon rode beneath a new crown made of golden roses and antlers, and beside him Mace Tyrell rolled like a well-fed river. They set up a court that looked a great deal like a feast outside Bitterbridge, and there declared again that the realm belonged to youth and laugh lines. Men flocked. Men always flocked to laughter. Stannis did not ride out to meet him. He held King's Landing as a man holds his breath underwater. He sent riders to the Marcher Lords and to Storm's End. He wrote a letter to Lord Randall Tarley in a hand so precise you could shave with it, reminding him of a duty he had taught his son. He wrote to old Mathis Rowan about oaths. He wrote to the Redwynes about ships and the law of the sea. He sharpened his city. He waited. In the Riverlands, the wolf ran. Robb Stark moved with his mother's counsel and his father's features, and he learned as he went the taste of sleep taken on a saddle and decisions made before bread. Jaime Lannister went riding into a whispering wood and came out of it bound and ashen. Edmure Tully, who had never been so good a lord as he wished to be, held his sister's boy close and said, "We did it," and Robb said, "We started it." When the raven came with the news that his father sat a live man at the right hand of a king who had never smiled in his life, Robb's hands shook. "We will not be kings," he said to the gray-cloaked men around him. "We will be what we were." And a great many Northmen felt a weight lift from their hearts and were ashamed of the lift. Tyrion Lannister came to King's Landing under banners half-hidden and offers half-made, and he walked into the Red Keep in a dusk light that made the stones purple. Bywater's men relieved him of a dozen little knives and 3 larger ones and a wit that would not be relieved. "Lord Stark," he said when they had put him in the council chamber with bread and wine, "you take my nephew and keep my sister, and I am bid to parley with you as if you were not the man who put a sword to the Lannister name." "I have put a law to it," Ned said. "You may try the taste." Tyrion drank. "It's thin," he judged. "Is there to be peace, then?" "Your father must withdraw his army from the Tully lands," Stannis said. "He must bend the knee to me. Your sister will be tried and punished if she is guilty. The boy will be placed where he can do no harm. There will be peace then. If he cannot accept these terms, there will be war he will not enjoy." "My father enjoys nothing," Tyrion said. "That has always been his great strength." He put down the cup and steepled his hands and watched Ned over the small roof of his fingers. "My Lord Stark," he said with a curious softness, "what you have done is brave, and if it brings you to grief, you will not have been the first brave man to die on a matter of law." "We do not die," Ned said. "We endure. And is there to be mercy for my brother, the handsome king of nothing?" Tyrion asked. "There is to be justice," Stannis said. "If your brother has done murder, he will die. If he has only made war, he will live in a tower and read books." "Gods be good," Tyrion said. "That would be a punishment." He lifted his cup to Ned. "To your daughters," he said. "May they be as hard to catch as you think. And if you do not think so, you should." Ned did not drink. The cup smelled of wine and the river. Outside the city, the camps bloomed and died and bloomed again. Messages flew. Men shifted their fealties like chessmen and swore they had never been otherwise. The great September murmured. The guilds counted coin. Children ran in the alleys with antlers fashioned out of twigs. Theirs were green, and another set with bits of painted bone. Those were beige, and another with blackened nails. Those were iron. They shouted, and their games ended in tears and laughter and bruises. On a morning when it seemed the air had been dipped in copper, a rider from Storm's End stumbled into the Red Keep with his horse a wreck beneath him. He had ridden through the night with his eyes open only because his fingers had kept them that way. "The garrison holds for Stannis," he croaked, "but the Tyrells lay siege. Renly has left half his army to starve us while he feasts at Highgarden and thinks of how pretty things are. We have barley. We have rats." Stannis set his jaw. "We sail at dusk," he said. Davos's mouth opened. "Your Grace," he said gently, "the Redwyne fleet is moored where it can be dealt with," Stannis said. "They will not expect me. They expect that I will sit in my chair and count the spears of my city like coins. They will not expect me because they think me a man of law and not a man of blood. A king must be both. Ned felt the ache in his leg flare, as if the bone had heard of dusk and disapproved. You will leave the city to me, he said. Go, feed your men, break the siege, and come back before the lion thinks to throw fire. Stannis looked at him as if trying on a pair of boots and finding the leather good. I will leave the city in your hands, he said. If it is not in your hands when I return, I will cut them off and use them as bookends. That would be a kindness, Ned said. I have too many books. They sailed at dusk. Melisandre stood in the prow with her arms lifted to a sky that had forgotten the sun all day and now bled with it. The sea took them like a mother with too many children, roughly and with a kind of stupid love. Davos stood by the tiller on his king's ship and thought, not for the first time, that men were straw and kingdoms were torches and gods were wind. In Winterfell, Sansa sat with Bran in the solar while Maester Luwin marked down the rations and asked questions about wool and barley and how many hands would be idle by snowfall. They were small questions, but they felt like real things, and Sansa took to them with an eagerness that would have shamed her a year ago. When she could not sleep, she went to the Godswood and spoke to the tree as if it were a friend. She told it about the curve of the North Road seen from the palisade, about the shape of the hills when a new snow fell and made every line soft. Once, she told it about a boy who had smiled at her in the yard and offered to fetch firewood that she did not need, and she said out loud, I am not who I was, and waited to feel the lie or the truth of it. The wind touched her hair and did not say. Arya crossed the neck in a boat that leaked and a mood that did not. The reeds whispered like an army. The crannogman who pulled them across said little. Once, he looked at her with a slow kind of curiosity and said, You run like a wolf. And Arya grinned and showed her teeth. By the time she saw the first towers of Moat Cailin rearing out of the swamp like men who had forgotten how to lie down, she had learned a dozen new ways to kill someone with 3 fingers and a stone. She thought she would never need them. She hoped she would always need them. In King's Landing, the days turned thinner. War had a price like everything else, and soon Ned was counting loaves, not swords, and fires, not lords. Tyrion came and went, deliberately not plotting. Varys came and went, inevitably plotting. Littlefinger was everywhere and nowhere. The city watched the river with a nervous hope and the sky with a nervous fear. A rumor like a fish slipped through the markets. Renly's banners had come as far as the Rosewood and turned back. Storm's End had been relieved in a night so black even the moon had not found its way. The Redwynes had lost 2 ships to a fire that no one could remember the beginning of. There were other rumors too, uglier. That a shadow had walked the walls of Storm's End like a man. That a lord had died before dawn who had been in the best health of any man alive at dusk. Ned did not love shadows. He did not love the Red Woman's smile. He loved the reports that said Davos had piloted boats through dark water with his hands and his teeth. He loved the simple arithmetic. Storm's End held. When Stannis came back into the Blackwater with twice as many ships as he had sailed out with and salt frozen in his beard like a poor man's jewels, the city cheered as if joy were cheap. Stannis went to the Queen's cell before he went to his bed. He stood over Cersei Lannister while she sat on a bench reading a book of lives of saints. Do you pray? He asked her. I do something better, Cersei said. I plan. For what? Stannis asked. For the day you choke, Cersei said pleasantly and turned a page. In the end, war did not come to the city in summer, though the promises of it were stacked like kindling. War came to the Riverlands and to the Mander and to the Valas of the Storm, and men died there in numbers that made counting an act of obscenity. In the city, Ned Stark held the law and Stannis held the crown, and between them they held peace as a mother holds a sick child. Jealously, grimly, well aware of how little the gods listened when you begged. On a night when the air tasted of iron, a raven came to the Tower of the Hand with a strip of parchment in which the ink had run as if the words had been written in tears. It was from Arya, though the hand was Yoren's and the words were few. The gist of them was this: airy safe. North soon. Keep your crows at home. Ned sat with the letter under the candle until the wax made a lake, and by morning his leg hurt less for the first time in months. He took bread with Stannis in the small hall and found the king oddly silent. What now? Ned asked him. Now? Stannis said. He looked down at his calloused hands and moved them on the table as if remembering how fingers learned letters. Now we rule Lord Stark. N.W. Hen Renly comes with flowers on his banners and the reach behind him, Ned asked. Then we cut the flowers, Stannis said. And when winter comes, we cut the snow. There is always something to cut. Ned thought of the pool in the God's Wood at Winterfell and the face in the Heart Tree, and the way the wind had moved the leaves in the Red Keep's godless grove. There was a kind of peace, even in a city where peace was a plank over a pit. It came in the way Tommen laughed when a dog licked his hand and did not look at his mother to see if he might. In the way Myrcella learned to stitch well enough to be proud of it without shame. In the way the Watch learned to put a fire out with buckets and not words. In the way Davos's men cut old rot away from the quays and found under it good wood. In Winterfell, the wolves were thick in the woods and the air had that smell it gets before the first true snow. Sansa stood on the battlements and put her hands on the stone and looked south. Somewhere beyond everything, her father was alive and had made the world stand still on the point of a sword. Somewhere her sister was a little nearer. Somewhere, the game boards were being changed under the hands of men she had been taught to admire and men she had learned to fear. She was not a queen, nor a promised bride, nor a song. She was a Stark. She was winter made into a girl who could look at a long road and not weep. On the King's Road, Arya ran with Gendry at her shoulder and Hot Pie somewhere behind, cursing his feet. The wind was in her hair, what hair she had left, and the cold was a knife in her lungs that made her feel alive. Ahead, the north lay like a hand held open. She would slap it and it would slap back, and that was all right. She had a sword. She had a name. She had a father who had taught her a thing worth more than a crown. That the pack was all. She would bring the road to the pack. She would bring the pack to the road. In the Red Keep, late, when even Varys had gone to wind his whispers around himself like a blanket, Ned Stark closed his eyes in his chair by the window and slept without dreaming. The night outside was clear and brought stars where the city never looked for them. The Iron Throne waited in its hall like an old wolf that had learned patience. In the morning, men would come again to speak of ships and grain and traders and banners. In the morning, he would limp to his place at the king's right hand and tell the truth again until it was believed or he was killed for it. But for now, there was only the breathing of a city that had not yet bled out and the slow cooling of a blade hammered hot into shape and set aside to temper. Somewhere a bell rang. Somewhere, a dog barked and woke a child and the child laughed. Somewhere, aboard a ship, a girl who had learned to drink sour water looked at the stars and thought, I know their names. Somewhere, in the reed beds, another girl said to the wind, Airy, and the wind set it back and made it something else. Winter was coming, as it always was. Men girded themselves against it, as they always did. Laws were made. Wars were planned. Children slept. Wolves hunted. The sea licked its teeth against the stones and did not care. In the Red Keep, a northern lord held a southern city together with a hand that would not unclench. On Dragonstone, the Red Woman watched the fire and saw shadows make kings and said nothing of what she saw. In Highgarden, a young king laughed and forgot no slight. In the west, an old lion counted and forgot nothing. In the north, boys learned to be men who would never be done learning. And far beyond where any raven would fly, in places men had forgotten to name, there were other sounds than bells, other lights than candles, and they moved toward the world of men with a patience colder than law. But that was for another day. For now, there was a city that had not fallen and a grim king on a spiky throne and a man beside him whose leg hurt and whose heart had made a choice. For now that was enough.